Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our Evolve 365 Microsoft Tips and Tricks session today. We wanted to start this weekly series to give simple and easy tips that anyone can go back to their desk and quickly implement. We know your time is valuable, so we strive to keep sessions to no more than 30 minutes, sometimes even less. And we also push the topics out monthly, so you only have to sign up once for the monthly series instead of 4 or 5 times. If you ever miss a session, you can find the recordings on our Planet Technologies YouTube channel at youtube.com/user/Planet Technologies. So a little about myself. I'm your host, Tanya Kaiser. I have more than 15 years experience with project management across multiple industries, including technology, legal, nonprofit, and construction. I'm also a longtime Microsoft geek and SharePoint nerd, and I'm a big believer in using technology to make your job easier. If you ever have any questions after a session, please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn. A little bit about Planet. Planet has been providing expert support in the Microsoft world for over 18 years. We offer full services for the entire Microsoft Cloud and Productivity Suite, including advisory, deployment, and training services, mobile application development and solutions, and strategic business consulting, including technology, compliance, and security guidance. So we're going to go ahead and kick things off. Today, we're going to take a look at all of the different Microsoft applications that are available on the Android operating system. So we do know that Microsoft has adopted a cloud-first, mobile-first strategy, and they really are holding true to that. So one of the first questions that people will have when they're looking at upgrading to Office 365 or rolling out Office 2016 and just that more mobile workforce that we have nowadays is, I have users on different applications, different platforms. Are they really going to be able to have the same experience? And the answer is yes, and we're going to take a look at some of those applications today. With a few exceptions, most of those applications are available on both iOS and Android. Now, easy way to get those if you've got an Android device is you can go to the Google Play Store. You can also go to a Microsoft site. I've got the URL there, products.office.com/en-us/mobile/office. I'm going to show you that website later on today as well. And you can put in your phone number or an email, and they will send you a link where you can download the applications to your device as well. So this is a US link. You may need it for other countries, but again, that's one other way that you can get the links directly to download those applications. Now, cost, all of these applications are free, but of course they're tied to an Office 365 account. So you are going to have that cost in there. It's free to download the application. You're going to need a Microsoft account of some sort, or if you don't have a Microsoft account, you can of course set up a free Outlook.com account and get some basic functionality with the online apps. But again, it's going to depend on what kind of Office 365 account you have. So free apps, but that cost is tied to the account. Now, the alternative, of course, it is Office 365. It is on the cloud. It is browser-based. So if a user does not want to download the mobile apps, or maybe there's only a certain app they want, maybe they just want Outlook, they don't want everything else, of course, they can go into a mobile browser and access their Office 365 content that way. So one of the things that I'm going to show before we get into a demo is just what apps are out there. There are actually a ton of Microsoft applications. So this is the core one, and by core, I mean what is a user going to use in their day-to-day work, regardless of the organization that they're in, regardless of if they're using a desktop, a laptop, or a mobile device. Of course, number one is email. It's the backbone of all business communication, and Outlook is available on both iOS and Android. I listed OneDrive second because we're seeing a big push from a lot of people who are moving to Office 365. It's almost second nature. They go email first, and then they look at their storage. Maybe they have network storage, maybe they have file shares, maybe people are just storing stuff on their C drive. But OneDrive seems to be really, really close behind email use when organizations are looking at what do we want to move. OneNote is one of my favorite apps. It's one of the core applications. Microsoft has pushed it. Not a lot of use depending on how people are familiar with it. And then you've got your core applications, Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And then here at the bottom, I've listed Skype for Business and SharePoint. Depending on the organization and how they operate, those are the other two that we see most often. So it's usually email, file storage, of course, the Office applications themselves, and then you're looking at communications, Skype for Business, and then SharePoint collaboration. So all of these are available on both iOS and Android. Now, the SharePoint app itself was announced at the Future SharePoint back on May 4th, and the iOS app was released in June, And then the Android SharePoint app was just announced a couple of weeks ago at Microsoft Ignite in Atlanta. So the SharePoint app on Android has really only been out a couple of weeks, and they still consider that in preview. Now, there's still more applications. So a lot of what we're talking about is these are Office 365 applications, but I listed the core one because that can be somebody using the desktop application for Word, but then also using the mobile version, not necessarily tied to Office 365. Now, there's other Office 365 components, and those have apps as well. The Office 365 admin group. So if you're an admin for Office 365, you can manage that on both devices. You also have groups. So if you're an organization who's using groups versus SharePoint, even though those are being intermingled, there is a separate groups application as well. Delve is something that, again, it's a component of Office 365. I think it's very, very underutilized. It's a great way to find documents that aren't necessarily yours, but ones from people that you work with. That's available on both of them. I've done some sessions on Sway. There's an iOS app, but no Android app. But Sway is such a light application that it works really well in a mobile browser. Yammer, if your organization is on Yammer, again, there's an app available for that. Office Lens isn't necessarily a component of Office 365, but it ties into OneNote and OneDrive. And then SharePoint Newsfeed. So there is a separate iOS application for the Newsfeed that's not available on Android. And this is one of the few that you're going to see is actually not on Android. So one more slide before we start looking at the applications themselves. Now there are some other just general Microsoft applications. Again, a lot of these are tied to cloud. You've got your regular Skype. So this is separate from Skype for Business. Skype is something that people may use for personal calls. Skype for Business integrates with the Active Directory, so you can pull up people. A lot of times it's federated, so you can chat and call people outside of your organization. Again, available on both iOS and Android. Power BI is a new component for business intelligence. Now, this is available on Android, but it depends very much on your device. The Android tablet that I'm going to show today is an older device, and when I tried to install the Power BI, it said your device is not compatible. So you will actually see that message if it's not going to work on your device. Microsoft Flow, another component of Office 365. This is tying into SharePoint. So when we had SharePoint Server and we had workflows, Microsoft Flow is a new application that is doing something like that. Again, this is also on Android, but it's marked as in development. Power Apps is another similar one to Microsoft Flow, a new one that they're pushing out, and that's in preview on Android. Dynamic CRM for content management, available on both. There's an Azure Active Directory app for My Apps if you've got any of those admin rights. And then a new one that they also announced at Microsoft Ignite called Staff Hub, which is designed for people who work on mobile workstations, you know, hotel staff, healthcare staff that don't have a desk dedicated to them. They on the go, they have shifts that they need to talk, you know, about from place to place. And that's a new application. That's on both of them, even though it was just released at Microsoft Ignite. And then these bottom two are actually the Outlook web app, and there's a separate version for iPhone and a separate version for Android. The Android one is considered in pre-release. Now I have those in red because I do not recommend using either one of those. If you're looking for email on your mobile device, I would say go with your native mail client or the Outlook mobile app itself, not the Outlook web app. If we have enough time today, I may get into that and show it, but the number one reason is there's not a sign out button on either one of those apps on either platform, which just seems like a really, really big oversight. When I sent some tweets to the Office 365 account and I asked, you know, is there a preference between Outlook or OWA, they really didn't respond. But just from a usability standpoint, they both have very similar look and feel, but the lack of a sign out button on those two Outlook web apps, I would say it is enough to say don't use those. The Outlook app is where they're pushing a lot of the updates, and you'd probably want to go with that one. And again, you see that some of these Android apps are listed with different statuses, in pre-release, in preview, in development. And if we go back to the other screens really, really quickly, only the SharePoint newsfeed is not available. The SharePoint app is in preview. I don't know what the difference is between those terms, you know, in development, in preview, in pre-release, like what the staging is. And that's what you see listed on the App Store, whether it's, you know, the iPhone app or the Android app, where a lot of these are still kind of going through the works. Now, on the in development one for Microsoft Flow, they specifically had a note that saying, you know, this app is still in development and maybe, unstable. Pre-release ones, you understand the same with preview that you're still in the early stages. It's kind of beta. They want your feedback. So that may be the two differences on there. But when in doubt, always look at the notes on the App Store wherever you're downloading that app from. So that's just a quick overview of the different apps that are available. In my demo today, I'm going to go back to that core slide. I'm going to take a look at the Outlook app, the OneDrive app. We'll open up one of the application apps, Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, and then we'll take a quick look at the SharePoint app as well. And the reason I'm showing those is that these are the core apps that people are moving their work streams to. Of course, email is there, but it ties in very, very much so with OneDrive and the other applications. We'll look at SharePoint since that was just released in preview at Ignite, and I'll try and do a side-by-side if we have time of the iPhone app and the Android app so you can see really, that the look and feel and the functionality is slightly different, but that experience, the functionality, really is going to be platform agnostic, what Microsoft is going for. So let me switch over to my tablet really quickly. Now, I do have an older Android tablet, so one of the things that I noticed when I was loading these apps is that they seem to take a little bit longer to load. I'm chalking that up to having an older Android tablet and not necessarily the app functionality itself. So I'm going to open up the Outlook application, and I've already signed into these, so it would be a little bit faster. And if you've used the iPhone application, you can see that the look and feel is very, very much the same. You've got the focused inbox, which is either love it or hate it. I've heard the strong opinion from a lot of people, like they do with many Office 365 applications, is why is this the default? I should be able to choose. This is one that's really easy to turn off, very similar to the iPhone application. You just hit that settings button, and if you scroll down, you've got focused inbox, and you can toggle it off, and it's really, really that simple. And then we go back to it, and we no longer have the focused inbox. So this is a brand new tenant that I got. You can see it's now filtering things because I turned off focus inbox, so it's going to have to readjust some things there. We've got our hamburger menu, very similar. We've got our folders. If we wanted to see all the folders, we can click that drop down. Then we see clutter. And we can just click that little up arrow. Really doesn't do a whole lot. So again, very simple menu. At the bottom, you've got, of course, your mail app. I can pull up my calendar if I wanted to and see those items. I can come in and see what files I've done recently, and then I can also see people and look through my contacts. So very, very similar look and feel to the iPhone application. Now this app just had an update. One of the things that to me was a little bit different is this settings gear was not a gear, which is a lot of people are used to seeing. If they see a gear, they know it's going to settings. Before the update that I did yesterday, it just had 3 dots. So that was a little different navigating around when you're looking for that gear. But again, if you've got Android users and they're saying, well, the menus are slightly different, they may need to do an app update. So when you look at your settings menu, again, you see your account, and you can see that it's pulling in OneDrive right into your inbox. They want to tie those together. You've got notifications, which you can click through. You can say, mail, email, basic stuff. I love the fact that you can turn off the sounds on here. You can turn on vibrate as well. And then you've just got swipe options. So this is one, if you're using the Outlook mobile app, to definitely pay attention to because you can control whether you're archiving items or whether you're scheduling an item. So that's definitely one that you may want to educate your users about and make sure that they know, if they're accidentally swiping on things and they're saying they're disappearing from my inbox, that's one thing to look at right away on the Outlook mobile app. We've already talked about focused inbox. You can organize the mail by thread. This is, again, Outlook is one of the apps within the Microsoft Productivity Suite that is the most customizable, and people either love or hate folders or keeping everything in the inbox. They either love or hate, email threads. They want everything in a thread so it's grouped together, or they don't. They just want the individual messages. So it's very, very much personal preference, but you have that ability to turn that on or off within your inbox. Now, since this is a brand new tenant that I was using, you're going to see a lot of different emails that are unread, but I can come back and I can turn on that email thread. And if I scroll back down, there were a few that were different device images. So this device image is one. Now I can pull it up and see the whole thread. Again, very personal preference on that, but you do have that option within Android. And then we've got link preview, and again, calendar notifications, accessibility, and that's kind of it for the feedback. We've also got that feedback button, which is really important. They are paying attention to feedback. I'm guessing that's where the gear came in with the most recent app update. So this is a quick look at the Outlook app on Android. Very, very similar look and feel, very similar functionality. I really didn't notice a whole lot between the two apps from Android to iOS. The only thing that kept throwing me off was that ellipsis menu instead of the gear, and with the most recent update, that was taken care of. So I'm going to open up the OneDrive app. Now in this one, you will see that ellipsis still. So again, this is OneDrive, so it may just be a matter of the way they treat the apps differently. It really threw me off in the email application, but you've got that ellipsis, so if you know on your Android application you're looking for that gear menu, you may want to look for the ellipsis and see what menu is in there. We do have the file menu. Again, very similar look and feel. You can go to recent, shared, discover sites, and then we've got the info bar on the account itself. It just shows you, your basic options. You do have sign out, but very, very similar look and feel. And then at the bottom, we've got our settings menu. Same stuff that you usually see on all the other settings. You've got your account, you've got a passcode. You can see that it's set off on this one. That may be something that is required depending on your organization, how they're rolling out Office 365. If they're allowing, people to use mobile applications, a lot of organizations require a passcode for email and OneDrive because that can contain confidential information. This is my own demo device, so of course it's not set there. For whatever reason, OneDrive seems to have this shake to send feedback. So if I actually, shake my device, I have it turned on, it's going to prompt me and say, hey, you shook your device. Do you want to send feedback? And you can dismiss that. I haven't seen that show up in other applications. It's a little funny to me that it's in the OneDrive app. It is on the iPhone as well. You can turn that off. I love that on the OneDrive app, they have a view help. And they ask you, they're prompting you, where do you want to open this up in? So you can do that, and you can also just tap outside that box to get outside of that menu. So again, very similar look and feel to the iOS app. It's going to look slightly different. You have more of the icon look on the iPhone, but this is going to be very familiar to anybody who's used Office 365 on any mobile device. And for the Android users, they're going to be very familiar with this, because they have the device itself. But if somebody's switching from iPhone to Android and you're concerned about the mobile applications, nothing too big to worry about. So you can see it's just very similar menu. Again, you've got this over here. I can still view it as tiles. Now this one view, again, it's just a matter of preference. Doesn't do a whole lot for you. I like to see the dates. You can see that the dates are still there. You can see that the looking at it in tiles. I can scroll up and scroll down. So not a whole lot going on there. Now, I did mention, there's all these different core applications. So you can see I've got Word, Excel, and PowerPoint open. So if I come into my email and I open a document, or if I go into OneDrive, it wants to tie those applications there. They're very much tied together. It's looking for that. If you're going to open a link, it's going to look for the Word application. If you want to save something, it's going to look for that OneDrive. So if I go back into OneDrive, and I have opened up some of these, and I maybe open up the financial report, and we'll see if we can get Word to open really quickly. It's going to open up a preview for me, and then I can use that ellipsis up there to say open it up, or what I really do is just click that little Word button at the bottom in the lower right-hand corner, and then it's going to direct me to Word. Now, when I open up an Excel document, it wants to open it up in Excel right away. But I love the fact that for Word documents, and I think it did the same thing for PowerPoint, it gives me the preview. So if I don't want to open it and edit it, I can just get that preview directly from within OneDrive. That was something that I really, really did like. Now, on the iPhone, it goes directly to Word. So I thought that was a slight difference. That was actually an improvement. I love the fact that I could get that preview. So I'm in the document, I'm on my tablet. You can see I've got a file menu here. So if I wanted to come in and actually make some edits, it's going to save it back to my OneDrive account. I also have the option to save it back to SharePoint. Now, one of the tips that they give you is, how do you type, how do you see the ribbon? This little A button here on the ribbon is going to give you styles. Now, depending on the Android version, this A button may expand the ribbon. So you can see I'm on a tablet, so I've got a larger screen. I'm actually seeing a good portion of the ribbon. If you're on a smaller screen, like a phone instead of a tablet, you want to look for that A button, and that'll expand and remove your ribbon. Now, if I come in here and I do some updates, maybe I want to start typing in here. The Microsoft site has some great tips around this, and then I want to get rid of the keyboard. We use our back button for the Android button, which is that little triangle there, and that just drops down the keyboard again. So really, really simple to use this. Of course, I can scroll through the document. It's doing an okay job of pulling up this document. It's a short document itself, but that's pretty much it. I can click the save button. It's telling me that it was a draft because I made an edit, and then it's telling me somebody else has a checked out file. Now that's probably because I also have this same document open on my iPhone. So this is one thing to think about when you're working with multiple devices. If you happen to have users who have more than one device, maybe they have an iPhone and they have an Android tablet like me, or maybe they have an Android phone but an iPad that's issued to them by work. You're going to get this document conflict if they're signed into the same document in the same place. So what I can actually do is close out of that document on my iPhone, and I can dismiss this, and then I can try and save it again. Give it a few minutes to pick up that nobody else is editing it, try to save it, and then there you can see, it's still reading that I'm on the iPhone. I can always discard their changes or save a copy. So that's something to be aware of. One thing that I noticed is that I could not sign into OneDrive on both devices at the same time. Now I'm in email, I can open up Word, I can be in SharePoint, but OneDrive is the thing that conflicts it when I'm trying to sign into both of them and access the same thing. So again, just one of those little things that you want your users to be aware of. And I'm going to go ahead and discard that document. So you can see it opens up really, really easily. Now, this is Word, pretty functional. Excel opened the same thing, except like I said, when I was going from OneDrive for the Excel documents, it wanted to open them directly into Excel. I didn't get that preview. So I can always click my back button to go back to OneDrive. And if I open up an Excel document, you'll see it's taking me directly into Excel. So that's one little difference from the iOS, the Android applications that I actually like. I love that preview that I got with Word documents. And again, it did it as well with PowerPoints. Same functionality in Excel. Again, I have my file menu. Now this may be collapsed if you're on a smaller device. I've got the save menu. So really, really similar experience across the devices. Now I'm going to open up really quickly SharePoint. And this is one where I do want to do a little side by side. This has a slightly different look and feel. So you can see it's loading up here. Again, I don't think this loading is because of the Android applications. I believe it's because it's my older tablet that's causing it. So I don't think that's going to be a concern with people who have newer devices. But you can see we've got the home menu, we've got that ellipsis again, and this takes us to our settings menu. So we have our account. You can, of course, come in and add another account. There's that shake to send feedback option that you can turn on or off. And that's kind of it. If I click my account, it just gives me my name. I can pull up my profile. And this is different from the iOS application. On the iOS application, you actually see the profile built in a little bit more. So I'm going to pull up my iPhone really, really quickly, and we'll take a look at how that's done. And I'm going to pull up SharePoint, so we can see a side-by-side of this. And this is the only application that I saw a little bit different functionality. So you can see I've got frequent and following in tabs on the iPhone, but on the tablet they're in one list. Now the settings menu is different. On the iPhone I've got it there at the bottom with the familiar gear, and if I click on my profile, I actually see it a little bit more visually. It looks like it's filled out a little bit more. On the Android device, I have to click that ellipsis, go into settings, and then actually click the account and then click profile. So a few more clicks there, and when it pulls up, you still have that same look and feel, but then we have tabs over here. So that's a little bit odd. We had tabs for the sites on the iPhone. We don't have those for the sites on Android, but we do have tabs for the profile. On the iPhone, again, it may be because it's a smaller device. When I want to see more people, I actually have to click see more, and then I will pull up people that are also there. So slightly different look. I feel like the profile is a little bit more hidden on the Android device. So, again, that was kind of a lot of clicks. I had to click the ellipsis, click settings, know that I can click the account, and then click profile just to be able to see that, and then I can tab through it. Whereas on the iPhone, it's just a matter of, my profile, and you see an indication there that you can go to that menu. So that's one of the things that I noticed that people are used to using that within SharePoint. And again, that's just going to be a matter of preference. Going back to the sites pages, I'm going to just pull up maybe our document center. And look and feel pretty similar. This is actually opening up in a preview window. It's not opening up directly in the app, so this may take a little bit longer to load than we like. And you can see that there are definitely some differences here. Now, again, it may be on the device size. Excuse me. It may also be because of this particular site. Since we know SharePoint, the future SharePoint update on May 4th, it was really, really important that they were going to push out modern lists, modern libraries, modern sites. The branding does not work well with the mobile applications. You're not going to see any of that. So it may be the site, it may be just a difference in applications. Sometimes the home site has branding as well, so I'm just going to open up one of our sales and marketing sites, and we'll take a closer look at that and see if we can just get into an actual SharePoint site. And I believe because these are all branded sites, they're opening up with this preview. But you can see, other than a few little idiosyncrasies with the menus, we have a very similar experience on look and feel. We can always use the back button, we can always use the home button, but it's very, very similar across devices. So I've got more space, obviously, for a tablet, so it's reordering these documents on the iPhone, but I still have that information there. So whether your users are using an iPhone or an Android device, or if they're using a mix of them for phones and tablets, they're going to have that same experience across devices with any of the Microsoft applications. So that was just a quick peek at the core applications. Again, you can see there's a ton of other apps here, the Office 365 admin app. We've got OWA, which I will show very, very briefly, and the reason why I recommend not to use it. Looks really similar to the Outlook application. Not a whole lot different, but there's no sign out button, and that for me is just a big no-no. And I saw a lot of other comments on the feedback for that as well. Whether or not you're just one person who wants to sign in and out every now and then, or whether you use multiple accounts. So if I come over here to my hamburger menu and get that to open up, it looks like it's still trying to connect, which was another one of the feedback items that this particular app would lose connection. So I've got all of my inboxes here, but no sign out button even with the settings. So that's my number one reason. You can see that there's just no ability to sign out. So if you needed to change accounts on a device, if you have an iPad that is used by different groups within your device, you're going to have to come in and remove that account completely, remove that application, and then reinstall the application and then add the new account. So I recommend just the Outlook app. Again, there's a ton of other ones. If I scroll to the next page, you can see I've got the Groups application there. There's Microsoft Apps, there's Microsoft Flow. Some of these are in preview for Android, so that's always something to be aware of. Now, when you're within the app, you may not see if it's in preview. You can always go back to the App Store and check the status of it, and then, of course, you'll get a notification when it leaves preview and goes to general availability. But for the most part, these apps work great on Android. So I'm going to switch back to my slide really, really quickly. Now, one of the things that I wanted to mention before we wrap up is supporting these Android users. You know, if you are concerned about the different platforms, Microsoft has some great basic information to get you started. So you saw between the two applications that there's really not a whole lot of differences. The menus may be slightly different. So some of the things that I found on the Android app, like that profile in SharePoint, you may not be aware that you can click into another menu. So you may just want to click it, see if it goes to a new menu. But if you go to support.office.com, there's actually some really good mobile devices out there. I'm going to show you this site really, really quickly. I know we're coming up on time, but this is just the support.office.com site. You can go to training, and then if you scroll to this first video here, Get Started with Office 365, on the left here we have some links, and then you've got Get the Most on Android, Get the Most on iPhone, Get the Most on Windows 10. So we're looking at Android today. You've got a very short video, but then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you have Office for Android phones getting started. So this is usual rabbit hole of Microsoft documentation. They have stuff out there. You just kind of have to hunt and peck for it and click through some menus to find what you're looking for. But this Getting Started guide for Android is pretty good. I mean, it's got these little animated GIFs that shows people how to sign in. It shows them, you know, how to access the ribbon. I mentioned that if you have a smaller device, you may need to know how to pull that ribbon up. it shows them how to use the back button, how to hide it. So that's a really great resource if you're not using an Android device yourself and you have to support those users. Now, I already showed you that website. So the other things that I want to make sure people consider before we wrap up. I love the fact that Microsoft is really sticking to their cloud-first, mobile-first strategy. The apps across the platforms are really, really great. I know there's a lot of Windows Phone people who are pretty sad that it's not getting attention. They're going where the market share is. And they've done a good job of putting out the Android apps very closely after the iOS apps. We had the SharePoint app in June, and then it was announced in September at Ignite that it was available for Android, and I downloaded that right away. Now, the big cautionary tale about Android is that the Android operating system has a lot of different flavors and it can also be customized. That's one of the #1 reasons people love those phones. They can go in and root them. They can go in and put mods on them. That's going to affect your applications. It may have some instability with a specific app. They may have limited availability for some applications altogether. So that's always the hard part about supporting users on a different platform, especially if it's BYOD. Now, if you're issuing devices and that operating system is locked down, that kind of takes care of that. And the alternative, of course, users can always go to the mobile browser to access those items on Office 365. Now, again, all of these changes that are coming out with the new applications, we know that the SharePoint Android app was just released 2 weeks ago for Microsoft Ignite. One of the great things that Planet has is Evolve 365. It's a Planet technology service, which is actually a subscription-based help desk as a service for Microsoft Office 365, Office 2016, and Windows 10. The whole point of Evolve 365 is to help you drive end user adoption and evolve your organization to be more productive. We have more than 28,000 on-demand self-help videos across Office 365, Office, and Windows 10. This is self-paced training. Users can come in, search the videos, and look at them at any time. We also have add-ons available for live support with Office 365 specialists and vision and planning sessions. So if you're wondering how you're going to roll out Office 365, including mobile applications, we can help you determine that and make some of those decisions about BYOD devices. Are you going to require a passcode? Is OneDrive going to be externally shared? And then every subscription comes with a dedicated Office 365 trusted advisor like myself. And part of my role is letting you know when these updates happen. Like if I know you have Android users, I may let you know, by the way, the SharePoint app is now available. Have you made a decision if you're going to make SharePoint Mobile available to your users? If you're curious about some of the content for Evolve 365, we do have a free trial site that you can check out. This has a sampling of our 28,000 videos. There's about 200 videos available on the site, but you get the look and feel of the site, and really you get to see what the content is like. The majority of our videos are 30 seconds to 1 minute long, so users come in, search for an item that they're trying to figure out how to do, and they get their answer right away. You can register for a free trial at freetrial.o365support.com. If you want to know more about the product itself, you can go to the website at o365support.com, and you can also send us an email at info@o365support.com. Now we're continuing our October series. The next 2 weeks I'm going to cover some advanced word formatting. We're going to talk about table of contents and then section breaks, headers, and footers, how you put together those large documents when you want different page numbers, table of contents. So that'll be a 2-part series that we'll cover over the 2 weeks. Of course, you can always find our recordings for all of our Planet Technologies webcasts, including the tips and tricks sessions and our BI sessions on youtube.com/user/Planet Technologies. I don't see any questions in our chat window, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up today just a little bit over time, but I hope this look at the Android applications was helpful to you, especially if you have users across multiple platforms. Microsoft is doing a great job about being platform agnostic, and I hope this was insightful for you. Thanks everyone for joining us today.